California isn't just serving sunshine and Netflix contracts anymore, it's dishing out political drama hotter than a jalapeno latte at Starbucks. Prop 50 is on the ballot, a proposal that could redraw political power in Congress. And just when you thought voting was as simple as filling a bubble, boom, the Department of Justice steps in and sends federal monitoring officials to polling centers across California. Why? Reports of voting irregularities, mounting distrust, and a political tug-of-war that could decide who holds the mic in Washington next. This isn't your usual election day. It's democracy with a security badge and a suspicious eyebrow raise. Buckle up because in the next 8 facts, we're breaking down why the feds are watching, who's panicking, who's pretending not to panic, and what this means for every voter. And it all begins with understanding what Prop 50 actually is and why it's causing political heartburn. Prop 50 isn't just another should we fix the potholes kind of ballot proposition. This is a constitutional amendment that could change the way congressional districts are drawn in California. And if you know politics, you know redistricting is basically the game board of power. Whoever draws the lines often decides who wins the game. Supporters say Prop 50 will ensure fairness by transferring redistricting authority away from legislators, who may draw political lines to favor their own party. Critics, especially within the Republican Party, believe it could heavily tilt the maps in favor of Democrats, potentially shifting several congressional seats blue. The stakes? High enough to make both parties start sweating like Wi-Fi signals during a power outage. Add concerns about voter database accuracy, ballot handling, and mailing irregularities, and suddenly Prop 50 isn't just a proposition, it's a political battlefield. So now the question isn't just what's Prop 50, it's why did this ballot measure attract federal attention like moths to a political flame? But if Prop 50 is the fire, then the federal monitors are the firefighters, or depending on who you ask, the fire inspectors showing up with a camera and a clipboard. So why did Washington get involved? Enter stage left, the California Republican Party. Concerned about reported irregularities in previous elections, things like questionable ballot handling, duplicate registrations, and long delays in vote processing, they fired off a formal letter to the U.S. Department of Justice asking for oversight at polling centers in California. Now, normally the DOJ monitoring elections isn't brand new. It's happened in previous presidential elections to ensure federal voting rights laws are followed. But here's the twist. This time, they're being sent in for a state proposition vote, not a federal race. That raised eyebrows fast. Supporters argue it's about protecting election integrity and preventing chaos before it starts. Critics counter that it's a political stunt to discourage voters, especially in left-leaning regions. The DOJ responded calmly, saying monitoring is routine and meant to ensure fairness, but everyone knows you don't send referees unless you expect someone to foul. So now, federal eyes will be watching polling places in multiple California counties, not because things already went wrong, but because both sides expect they could. But where exactly are these officials going, and why were those places chosen like lottery winners in a democracy drama?
California is massive, with enough voters to swing national narratives, but the Department of Justice isn't sending monitors everywhere, just to 5 key counties: Los Angeles, Orange, Riverside, Kern, and Fresno. Why these? Simple. They're California's political hot zones, the swing seats of the West Coast. Los Angeles and Orange counties in particular are where Republican hopes meet Democratic dominance. Throw in Riverside and Fresno, and you've got a mix of suburban, rural, and urban ballots colliding like tectonic plates of ideology. Officials claim these counties were picked based on historical patterns of irregularities and volume of voter traffic. Translation: they're where things get spicy. And yes, these are the same regions that sparked complaints in the last 2 election cycles over missing ballots, ballot box handling, and mail-in counting delays. So if you're wondering why the DOJ is rolling out its election squad here, it's not random. It's statistical strategy meets political optics. The monitors aren't just checking boxes, they're checking the boxes that check the power. But here's the thing. Sending in monitors doesn't come without political fireworks. So let's dive into the reaction, or as I call it, the bipartisan blame game. If you want to see democracy's version of a food fight, just look at the reaction to this move. On one side, Republicans are claiming victory. Finally, someone's keeping an eye on what they call suspicious voting processes. On the other, Democrats are fuming, calling the DOJ's involvement a political stunt to intimidate voters. California Governor Gavin Newsom called it federal interference, arguing that this is a dangerous precedent, using national resources to oversee a local measure that directly affects party balance. Meanwhile, the DOJ insists it's business as usual. Election monitoring has always been a part of our commitment to free and fair elections, said an agency spokesperson. They're framing it as neutral and procedural, but optics matter, and when you've got federal agents showing up at polling centers during a ballot initiative that might flip power in Congress, it's hard to call it routine. The truth? Both sides have their narratives ready. If Prop 50 passes, Democrats will celebrate transparency. If it fails, Republicans will say, "See, we told you so." Either way, it's the perfect political boomerang. But what do regular voters think about all this? Let's zoom out from politicians and zoom in on the people holding the ballots. While politicians are busy throwing sound bites like dodgeballs, the average voter just wants to fill in a bubble and go home without starring in a conspiracy theory. So, how do voters feel about federal officials watching over polling sites? It's a mix. Some say it makes them feel safer, like having a security guard at the bank. "At least this way, no one can mess with my vote," one voter told local reporters. But others see it differently. They argue it's giving off surveillance state vibes, like you're being graded while voting. Critics fear it could discourage certain communities, especially young voters, immigrant households, or first-timers, from showing up at all. It's not about whether the monitors do anything wrong. It's the idea of being watched. To make it even more complicated, most Californians vote by mail. So if the majority of ballots aren't even cast in person, what exactly are officials monitoring? Symbolism, confidence, and maybe political theater. But this isn't just about feelings. It's also about what could actually go wrong. So let's talk about the risks if monitoring fails or goes too far. Election monitors sound reassuring, but if handled poorly, they can create chaos faster than a touchscreen voting machine freezing at 1% battery. First, there's the risk of voter intimidation. If monitors get too close, ask questions, or appear authoritative, voters might feel bullied rather than protected. Second, there's disinformation. The wrong photo on social media, a federal officer standing beside a ballot box, and suddenly the internet screams rigged before polls even close. Then there's the flip side. If monitors aren't strict enough, it opens the door for questionable practices, like ballot harvesting or mishandling. Experts warn that transparency must be balanced with discretion. Protect the vote without making voters feel like suspects. And lastly, the legal aftermath. If either party feels this election wasn't fair enough, expect lawsuits, televised hearings, and enough press conferences to power a small city. All right, enough doom for a second. Let's talk about the people behind the scenes. Who are these monitors? Are they election superheroes or just people with clipboards and coffee? These officials aren't stormtroopers with handcuffs. They're more like walking compliance cameras. Most are attorneys or civil rights specialists from the U.S. Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division. Their main role, make sure polling sites follow federal voting laws, especially the Voting Rights Act, and that no voter is denied access. But what they can't do, they don't count votes, don't touch ballots, and definitely don't tell polling staff what to do. No secret override button, no power to shut down a voting center. They observe, report, and if something shady happens, they escalate it legally. To voters, they might look official because they are, but they're not there to play referee. Think of them as body cams for democracy. Still, the presence of any federal badge inside a polling place sends a message. Either we're protecting this or we're watching you. And that message changes depending on which side of the political fence you're standing on. So now, the million-dollar question. What does this all mean for the future of elections in California, the US, and maybe beyond? You might think this is just a California problem. Palm trees, Hollywood, and political drama. But Prop 50 and the DOJ monitors could set a model for future elections across America. If federal monitoring becomes standard for state propositions, it opens the door to national oversight of local decisions, a win for transparency or a crack in state sovereignty, depending on who you ask. Other states are watching closely, especially places with tight elections or controversial ballot measures. If California pulls this off smoothly, expect similar calls in Texas, Florida, Pennsylvania, anywhere political distrust is bubbling.
Globally, this becomes a test case. Democracies worldwide are struggling with misinformation and election credibility. If America, the self-claimed defender of democracy, needs federal babysitters at polling sites, what message does that send internationally? Whether Prop 50 passes or flops, the legacy will be the same. Elections aren't just about counting votes anymore. They're about protecting belief in the vote.
And there you have it. The ballots, the federal badges, and the political tension thick enough to spread on toast. But this isn't where the story ends. It's where you step in. If you believe in real journalism without the sugarcoating, hit that subscribe, like, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think federal monitors protect democracy, or are they a little too close for comfort? Your voice matters more than ever. Also, show some love to our sister channels, building the next generation of thinkers and dreamers, at Sparkling Kids and at Rayma Fatima. Fun, learning, creativity, all in one place. Let's grow together, learn together, and be a louder voice for truth as a global family.